She was sleeping in a barn next to the horses, until a cowboy said, "You belong in my house." Most folks did not even know it was there. It was old, made of rough wood that had faded from red to a tired brown. The roof creaked when the wind blew and the doors never fully closed, but inside it was quiet. Quiet in a way the streets never were. That was why she chose it. During the day, the barn smelled of hay, dust, and animals. At night, the smell became softer, mixed with cool air and earth. The horses were calm, used to the sounds of the night. They shifted their weight, breathed slowly, and sometimes snorted gently, as if reminding her that she was not alone. She slept on a small pile of hay in the far corner, away from where the horses stood. She was careful not to disturb them. She respected them. In a strange way, they felt safer than people. Horses did not judge. They did not ask why she was there or what she had lost. They accepted her quiet presence. She wrapped herself in an old blanket she had found near a trash bin weeks earlier. It was thin and torn in places, but it was better than nothing. When the nights grew colder, she layered her clothes and tucked her hands under her arms, breathing slowly, counting her breaths until sleep came. Sleep did not come easily. Every sound made her alert. The snap of wood, the rustle of hay, the distant call of an owl. Her body had learned to stay ready, even when her eyes closed. Still, the barn was better than the sidewalk, better than the shelters where crowds and noise made rest impossible. She had not always lived like this. There was a time when she woke up in a bed, brushed her hair in a mirror, and planned her days. She once believed life followed a simple path. Work hard, be kind, and things would fall into place. For a while, they did. Then came the quiet losses. First, a job that disappeared when the business closed, then a place she could no longer afford, friends who said, "just for now," but meant something else. Each step down felt temporary at first. She told herself she would fix things soon, but soon stretched into months. Money ran out. Phone calls stopped being returned. Pride kept her from asking for help one more time. She packed what she could carry and told herself it was only for a little while. That was months ago. The barn became her routine. She arrived after sunset, careful to stay unseen. She left before dawn, before the ranch came alive with movement. She washed her face in a public restroom in town, brushed her hair with a small comb she kept in her pocket, and tried to look like someone passing through, not someone with nowhere to go. During the day, she walked. She walked to stay warm, to stay awake, to stay invisible. Sometimes she sat on a bench and watched people laugh, talk, live their lives. She wondered if they could tell. She wondered if they saw her at all. At night, she returned to the barn. The horses began to recognize her. One brown horse with a white mark on its nose would step closer when she entered, watching her with calm eyes. She spoke to him softly, never too loud. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, as if she did not use it enough. "Hey there," she whispered once. The horse flicked an ear, relaxed. That small moment meant more to her than she would admit. She never took anything that was not already there, never touched the feed, never made a mess. She believed that if she stayed invisible and respectful, no one would notice her, and if no one noticed her, she could stay. But winter was coming. She could feel it in the air, in the way the nights bit harder, and how her breath showed when she exhaled. Her blanket no longer felt like enough. Her fingers grew stiff, her joints ached in the mornings. She worried about what would happen when snow arrived. Still, she stayed. Because leaving meant facing the truth. She had run out of places. One night, as she lay on the hay staring at the dark ceiling, memories came uninvited. A kitchen table, a laugh she had not heard in years, a door closing for the last time. She pressed her lips together, refusing to cry. Tears made noise, and noise brought attention. She learned how to disappear. Days passed like this, blending together. Hunger became something she managed instead of feared. Cold became a challenge instead of a shock. She learned the rhythm of the barn, the horses' movements, the way moonlight fell through the broken boards. She thought she was alone. She did not know that someone else had begun to notice the small signs. The way a bucket was moved. The way the hay looked disturbed in the corner. the feeling that the barn was not as empty as it should be. She had no idea that her quiet survival was already changing the path of her life. For now, she slept beside the horses, believing the barn was the end of the road, not knowing it was only the beginning. The cowboy did not notice her all at once. It happened slowly, the way important things often do. He had worked on the ranch for most of his life. The land was familiar to him in a way people rarely were. He noticed changes the way others noticed faces. A gate left open, hoof prints too close to the fence. A water bucket emptier than it should have been. At first he thought nothing of it. Animals had habits of their own. Wind knocked things over. Time changed everything. Still, something felt different about the barn. Not wrong, just lived in a quiet way. One morning, while feeding the horses, he noticed the hay in the far corner was pressed down, shaped as if someone had rested there. He stood still for a moment, hands on his hips, eyes scanning the space. No one was there, just horses chewing slowly, the sound of their breathing steady and calm. He told himself it was nothing. But the next day it happened again. The bucket near the stall had been moved slightly, not kicked, not spilled, just placed somewhere else. Carefully, thoughtfully, that caught his attention. Animals were not careful like that. He didn't say anything to the other workers. There was no reason to start rumors or trouble. Instead, he watched. He noticed that the horses were calmer than usual in the mornings, especially the brown one with the white mark on its nose. That horse stood near the corner more often, as if guarding something invisible. When the cowboy brushed past him, the horse did not flinch. It seemed almost protective. That was when the cowboy knew someone was coming into the barn at night. The thought didn't make him angry, it made him curious. He grew up around people who fell on hard times. He knew how fast life could change. He had seen good people lose everything without warning. So instead of locking the barn or calling anyone, he decided to wait. One evening, he stayed late, pretending to fix a loose board. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in orange and soft purple. The air grew colder as the day ended. He sat on an old crate, hat pulled low, listening. Time passed. Just when he thought no one would come, he heard soft footsteps, careful ones, slow ones, someone who did not want to be heard. He stayed still. She stepped inside like a shadow, closing the door as gently as possible. She froze when she realized she was not alone. Their eyes met in the dim light. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. She looked ready to run. The cowboy lifted one hand slowly, palm open. "Easy," he said, his voice low and calm. "I ain't here to scare you." "That all right?" He could see it in the way she stood, tired but strong in a quiet way. "I'm not mad," he said. "You haven't hurt anything." "You're good with them," the cowboy said. "They listen," she replied. He nodded. "They usually do." Instead, he told her when the workers arrived in the mornings and when the barn was busiest. Not as a warning, more like information. When he left, he didn't tell her to go. That mattered. Over the next few days, he didn't mention her presence to anyone. He made small changes instead. Left an extra blanket folded near the tack room. Made sure the barn door latch was quiet. He never said the gestures were for her. She noticed anyway. Their conversations grew slowly, short words at first, then longer ones. She told him she used to work in an office. He told her he preferred horses to crowds. They talked about weather, about the land, about things that didn't hurt to remember. He never asked how she ended up there. She never offered. One night the wind cut sharp through the boards and the cold settled deep. She tried to sleep, but her body shook. Her breath came out in short bursts. She wrapped herself tighter in the blanket, but it wasn't enough. Jack noticed. He had come back to the barn to check on a horse that wasn't feeling well. When he saw her curled in the corner, pale and trembling, something tightened in his chest. "This ain't right," he said softly. She tried to sit up. "I'm okay." "You can't stay here tonight," he said, not unkindly. Fear flashed across her face. "I'll go," she said quickly. He held her gaze. "That's not what I mean." "You don't know me." "Just one." She paused for a moment and looked back at them as if she was leaving something important behind. Then she turned and kept walking. Jack did not rush her. He walked a few steps ahead, letting her move at her own pace. The path to his house was short, but to her it felt long. Each step brought new thoughts. What if this was a mistake? What if she was asked to leave in the morning? What if she did something wrong without knowing it? The house came into view, warm light glowing through the windows. She had almost forgotten what it looked like, light inside a home at night. It made her chest ache in a way she could not explain. Jack opened the door and stepped aside. "Come on in," he said. She hesitated at the doorway. Crossing that line felt heavier than walking into the barn ever had. Finally, she stepped inside. Warmth wrapped around her instantly. Not just heat, but a deep comfort that reached her bones. The house smelled like coffee and clean wood. Nothing fancy, just lived in. Safe. Jack closed the door behind them. The sound of it clicking shut made her jump slightly. She hadn't been behind a locked door in a long time. "You can sit," he said, pointing to a chair near the table. "I'll get you something warm." "Tea," he said. "It helps. If you want to wash up." She turned on the sink and watched clean water run over her hands. When she finished, Jack had left folded clothes on the bed in the guest room. Simple things. Clean. She ran her fingers over the fabric, unsure if she deserved them. Changing felt strange, like stepping into someone else's life. She lay down on the bed carefully, afraid to disturb it. The mattress felt too soft. Her body didn't know how to relax. She stared at the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of the house. Minutes passed, then more. Her eyes burned. Tears slipped out without warning. She covered her mouth, trying to stay silent. She wasn't sad exactly. She was overwhelmed, safe. And that felt dangerous after so long. Eventually, exhaustion won. Sleep took her deeper than it had in months. Morning came gently. Light filtered through the curtains. She woke in a panic, sitting up too fast. For a moment she didn't know where she was, then she remembered. She expected Jack to be standing there, telling her it was time to go. Instead, there was only quiet. She dressed quickly and stepped into the kitchen. Jack stood at the stove, cooking. He glanced over and smiled slightly. "Morning. You don't have to be." Photos on the wall, boots by the door. A life built from routine and care. Outside, she stood on the porch and breathed in the fresh air. The land stretched wide and open. For the first time in a long while, she felt something new. Hope. She didn't know what the future held. She didn't know how long she would stay. But she knew one thing for sure. She was no longer invisible. The days that followed moved slowly, but in a good way. Emma woke each morning unsure if she was still allowed to be there. Every time she opened her eyes and saw the soft light in the room, her chest tightened. She waited for the feeling to disappear, for someone to tell her it was over. But each morning, the house stayed quiet and welcoming. Jack did not treat her like a guest who had overstayed. He did not watch her closely or remind her of rules. He simply went on with his routine, and somehow that made it easier for her to breathe. At first, she tried to stay out of the way. She cleaned without being asked. She washed dishes, swept the floor, and folded laundry with careful hands. She wanted to prove she was useful, that she was not a burden. Old fears followed her everywhere. Jack noticed, but he did not stop her. One evening he said gently, "You don't have to earn being here." The creak of the house, the wind outside, even the ticking clock made her heart race. Her body still remembered nights when safety could disappear without warning, but nothing happened. Each night ended the same way, quiet, steady, unchanged. Slowly, her shoulders began to relax. Slowly, her breathing deepened when she slept. Jack showed her small things without making it feel like a lesson. Where the extra blankets were, how the heater worked, which cupboard held the mugs he used every morning. He spoke to her like she belonged there, not like someone who might leave at any moment. Some days she joined him outside. She helped with small tasks around the ranch. Nothing too hard, feeding the horses, cleaning brushes, carrying light tools. Her hands remembered work. The rhythm felt familiar, comforting. The horses greeted her like an old friend. The brown one with the white mark stayed close, brushing against her leg whenever she passed. She smiled more around them than she did around people. Jack noticed that too. "You've got a calm way about you," he said once. "They trust that." Evenings became her favorite time. The sun would sink low, painting the land in warm colors. They sat on the porch sometimes, not talking much. Silence no longer felt heavy. It felt shared. Still, there were moments when fear crept back in. One afternoon, Jack came home later than usual. Emma stood at the window, watching the road, her stomach tight. Old thoughts whispered that this was how it ended. That kindness always had a limit. When Jack finally arrived, dusty and tired, she felt relief wash over her so strong it surprised her. "You okay?" he asked, noticing her pale face. She nodded. "Yeah, just tired." Without thinking, she walked into the kitchen and sat at the table, hugging herself. Jack found her there making coffee. He didn't ask questions. He poured her a cup and sat across from her. "Nightmares?" he asked softly. She nodded. "Sometimes." Not because the words were comforting, but because he said them like someone who knew. As weeks passed, she started to feel something unfamiliar: stability. Days had shape again. Mornings work, evenings rest. She didn't feel strong yet, but she felt less broken. One day she found herself laughing. It surprised her so much she covered her mouth, as if laughter were something she might get in trouble for. Jack looked at her and smiled. "Good sound," he said. She smiled back, this time without stopping herself. She still carried her past with her. Some days were heavy. Some memories came without warning. But she was no longer facing them alone. Jack never tried to fix her. He listened when she spoke and stayed quiet when she didn't. Trust grew in small, ordinary moments. Shared meals, quiet work, simple kindness. It was not loud or dramatic, it was steady. One evening, as they watched the sky darken, Emma spoke without planning to. "I don't know how to stay," she said. "I'm afraid I'll do it wrong." "Staying isn't something you do right or wrong," he said. "It's something you allow." It changed things the way the land did, slowly, season by season, without asking permission. Emma learned this by living it. Winter came, but she did not face it from the barn. Snow dusted the ground outside the house, soft and quiet. Inside, warmth stayed steady. She learned the sounds of the house at night, which creaks meant nothing, and which meant the wind was strong. She stopped waking in panic every morning. When she opened her eyes, she no longer expected to be told to leave. Some days were still hard. There were mornings when she felt heavy for no clear reason. On those days, she moved slowly, spoke less, and stayed close to the horses. Jack noticed, but he never asked what was wrong unless she wanted to talk. He understood that healing did not follow a straight line. One afternoon, while brushing the brown horse, she felt tears slip down her face. She didn't try to stop them. The horse stood still, warm and steady. Jack watched from a distance and said nothing. That silence was a gift. As weeks turned into months, Emma began to do more than survive. She began to choose. She helped organize the tack room. She learned how to fix small things around the ranch. Jack showed her how to mend a loose fence wire and how to spot when a horse was uneasy before it showed signs. She listened carefully, proud of herself for learning again. One evening, she surprised herself by saying, "I think I want to work again." "What kind of work?" Jack waited by the door. "You'll be fine," he said. She nodded, breathing in, and she was. Each small step made the next one easier. She started saving a little money. She bought herself a notebook and wrote plans she once thought she was no longer allowed to have. Nothing big, just steady goals. At night, they sometimes talked about the past, not in detail, not all at once. Emma shared pieces when she felt ready. Jack listened without trying to change the story. He never made her feel like her past made her smaller. She realized something important one quiet night as they sat on the porch. The stars were bright, the air calm. Jack hadn't rescued her. He had offered her a place where she could stand again on her own feet. That understanding mattered. Spring arrived gently. Green returned to the land. The horses grew restless in a happy way. Emma found herself laughing more easily now. She moved with confidence she had forgotten she once had. One day she walked back into the barn alone. The corner where she used to sleep was still there, unchanged. She stood quietly, feeling the memory without letting it hurt her. She whispered a thank you not to the barn but to the version of herself who had survived it. When she stepped back outside, she did not look back. Life did not become perfect. There were still worries, still moments of doubt, but they no longer owned her. One evening, Jack said, "You know, this place feels more like home now than it used to." Not because of the land, but because kindness had been planted there and allowed to grow. Emma learned that home was not something you earned through suffering. It was something built through trust, patience, and choosing to stay, even when leaving felt easier. She never forgot where she came from. And she never took for granted the moment a quiet cowboy looked at her and saw a person, not a problem. The barn was once her shelter. The house became her home. And the life she rebuilt became her proof that sometimes the smallest act of care can change everything.